Hello, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at the Fashion Institute of Technology, doing a continuing tutorial series for JD 138 Basic Rhino. This tutorial will be covering the creation of a spoon from an elliptical ovoid primitive. Okay. Coming into perspective viewport, as we did in class, I have a small spoon in front of me here. I will take some measurements off of. Spoon is 146 millimeters long. I'm going to draw some reference lines. A line 146 millimeters long. I'm going to move it into the center by using a mid snap. Turn off grid so I don't get confused. Mid snap to 0, 0. The width of the spoon the widest point on the bowl is 31 millimeters. So I will offset this curve 15.5 millimeters, both sides option, to give me that total. The bowl segment from heel to toe is roughly 50 millimeters long. Draw a line both sides. End snap for the end here. Excuse me. And this I will offset 50 millimeters. The thickness of the bowl, or depth, is 7.8 millimeters. So I will offset this curve 7.8 millimeters, which would be, to do on each side, that would be 3.9. Both sides. I'll go ahead and draw a polyline around that. Back into top C-plane. So that gives me the basics for the spoon. Going to create an ovoid now. A solid. It's an ellipsoid. Sorry, that's what they call it. An ellipsoid from center. Center of the ellipsoid will be 0. Then using my... Unfortunately, somewhere along the line I lost that center line. I'm going to bring that back. There. Copy that. And then bring it back. Alright. As we were. Solid ellipsoid from center. 0, 0. Using end snap. I'll get the end of my ellipsoid, and snap again to get the width, and end point again to get the depth. Actually, the depth ended up being off. Okay, I forgot, or didn't forget, I just wasn't paying attention. And actually I need to make the snap at the midpoint here, or the intersect point. That way, because by going to the end, I ended up tilting it. And then end again. Okay. Can turn off the curves. I want the seam of this object to be on the bottom, Rhino usually puts the seam on the side, and this is no exception. If you go to wireframe, it becomes a little easier to see it. So I want to rotate it around to the bottom, so I'm going to pick a view where I can see what I want to do and get a C-plane behind it. That would be a front C-plane in this case. And then I'm going to rotate that seam around. Unfortunately, I don't have any geometry under here, but I'll bet I can probably use... oh, probably not. I need to get some reference geometry on the bottom of that ellipsoid. So to get that, I'm going to come to my Curve Tools, Section, and I'm going to use Grid Snap to reach out beyond this ellipsoid. Now remember, the grid continues forever. It just doesn't display beyond what you've asked it to in your option settings. So now I have what I need. I'm going to come here, and I'm going to rotate this seam. So Surface, Edit Tools, Adjust Closed Seam, select Closed Surface for seam adjustment, and there we go. I want to snap to some piece of geometry on that bottom curve I've gotten, and mid is probably going to work as well as any. And that has reoriented that seam to the underside. Delete that curve. I'll leave it. Actually, I'll just turn the curves off. Back into top C-plane. So, I'm ready to start modeling. First thing I need to do is to rebuild this object. Right now, it is a very simple object, mathematically speaking, of 8 and 5. The amount of points it has right now would not work for what we need to do. So I'm going to set it to 10 by 10. Now you'll see it's lost some of its shape due to our doing that. Maybe a little too much. Try 15. Actually, that one I'll leave 10. You can watch it update down here, and what I want are more cross sections going this way. Okay. So 10, 15. Yeah. Turn on the points, and you can get a good idea of our object. First thing I want to do is to flatten the top of it. So I'm going to grab all of the control points using a window selection that are above the midline, and I'm going to project those to C-plane with the Delete Yes option. Now I have some oddities at this end, and that's because I missed some points with my window selection. Go back and pick those up. Double check my selection, and again, project to C-plane. Now if you look at this from the right view, it gives kind of a brutal point here. So I'm going to actually move them back up again, turn off Grid Snap, just a little bit, holding down the Shift key, just a little, like that, so that it's not so hard or kinked toward the edge. And that begins the spoon. Now I want to grab all the points except for the end 2 rows. And I'm going to transform these with a non-uniform scale, using this endpoint as a starting place for an origin. I don't want to scale in that direction, so I'll keep 1 or enter 1. I do want to scale in this direction, however. Now it would be nice to have those curves back so I can see where I actually want that heel of the bowl, and that's about there. And I don't want to scale in the z-axis, so I'll keep 1. Okay. I don't have enough geometry here to really control my spoon well. I am going to go ahead and, before I add geometry, get some tools out that I'm going to want to use. Under Select, I'm going to go to the Lasso Points button, do the pop out for that, pull it off to the side. And under the Surface Tools, I'm going to go to the Control Points tool button and hold it down and pull off that toolbar. So I have those handy. I want to know which way is U and which way is V. If you remember from class, these are the 2 buttons for Select U and V. Only way to really know is to try it. There's Select U. It worked. I'm going to go ahead and that's actually already where I want it. I was going to move it, but instead of moving it, I'm going to scale it. And I have a few choices as how to scale. I'm going to stick with my non-uniform scale. Now I can select on one of these points or at the end point or whatever, but I want to scale it symmetrically in this direction. I want to narrow the neck or the heel of the spoon bowl. So I'm going to just go ahead and use 0, enter for the starting point. And this time I do want to scale in this direction. And I'm going to bring those points in to a rather tight neck. Y was at 0.395. We don't want that. We want that to stay the same. 1 enter. And Z the same. 1 enter. Now there's quite a taper here, but you're not going to see it because Rhino doesn't have enough point between to really display it. But we're not going to be concerned about that just as yet. Now I want to flatten the base of the handle here. But I don't have an easy way of doing that unless I create my own construction plane to project this ring of points onto. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Curve Tools. I'm going to create a circle, center radius, from this endpoint. Okay? Problem is, I'm in the top viewport. The top C-plane, which means that circle is going to run parallel to the top C-plane. I want it parallel to the front C-plane. So I'm going to activate the front C-plane, and now I'll get a circle in the direction I want it. I'm going to go to my Set C-plane on the viewport tool, pop-out menu there. Set C-plane to object. Just like that. I can delete that circle now. I want to select this ring of points, which we know we can get with selecting U, and I'm going to project those to C-plane. Hit the wrong one. Project to C-plane, and yes, I want to delete the input objects. And that will help to flatten the end of that a bit. I'm going to repeat the process at the other end. So I could actually go ahead and draw another circle because that C-plane is already parallel to the front C-plane, or I could activate front C-plane. Either is fine because either one will tell this circle which direction to be made in. It's important that I click at the right point. And I'm going to set a C-plane to that as well. Select this ring of points and project it to C-plane. Yes option. And then go back to top. I'm going to leave those selected for a minute and take a look and see what I think of the end result. It's okay. I would like to scale those together. I'd like to make them smaller. I'm going to go ahead and use a non-uniform scale to do that. And I could use this endpoint as an origin, or I could use 0. I'll use the endpoint this time. And this is the direction I want them to scale. So I'll do my 2-point reference, my first click, and my second click. Y I want to stay the same, stay 1, so that's already good, and Z is 1. Gives me a little more graceful tip to that spoon. Now I'm going to come in and give Rhino some more geometry to form this handle up with. I'm going to insert control point. I'm going to click on my spoon. Now it's important to disable these objects next, which you can do here, and on the shortcuts I had you do at the beginning of each class, that's X enter. And now I will add select surface or curve for control point insertion. And I'm going to come in here and add the control points where I think I'll most need them. And you can see each time I add it, Rhino's now, I'm giving it more that it can use to truly represent what I want. I want several of these as we approach the heel of the bowl. That looks good. Okay. I want the thickness of the bowl to be the same. I mean, thickness of the handle to be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and click the 4 control points at the back. Select V this time, so it selects them by length. And I am going to take from that selection anything I don't want to move, which is anything that has to do with the bowl. So I'm going to use a window selection with Control key held down to remove those. The rest of those points I'm going to project to the top C-plane with the Delete Yes option. Going now into my front C-plane, or turning on Gumball, whichever I prefer. I'm going to move them back down. And since I projected them all together to the C-plane, they're all now at a static thickness. So as I move them back down, I can set the thickness of my spoon handle. Something like that. Perhaps. Okay? I find that the spoon handle is too thick. I also think that it's kind of coming to an odd point down below, and I'm not sure how that happened, but I know how I'm going to fix it. Oh, I know how it happened. Let's back up. I ended up selecting this point along with the rest, which I did not want to do. Okay. Project them to the C-plane once again. Move them down to get a nice thickness. And now it looks much more realistic at the back side here. I'm going to grab these 2 rows of points. Turn off my gumball. Going to select V again. Going to deselect once again any points that have to do with the bowl of the spoon by holding down the Control key and using a window selection. And I'm going to do a non-uniform scale. Hold on one moment. Resuming. Going to use a non-uniform scale. Go ahead and use this endpoint. By the way, project is dangerous to have on right now. And I want to scale those out so that it doesn't taper so sharply underneath the spoon. And that shouldn't really increase the width of the handle much, because those aren't the points that are determining the width of the handle. It will a little bit, but not a lot. I don't want to scale them this direction at all, so I'll make sure that's a 1. But I also want to lift them up a little bit to round the bottom of that handle a little bit. Okay. If I want to decrease the flare on the handle, I would grab all of these and do a non-uniform scale. 0 is fine here. I do want to change the scale here. I don't want to change it in the other directions. So 1, enter, and 1 and 1, enter. Remove this first row of points and repeat. Being careful not to create anything too abrupt, unless you want something abrupt. The 2 rapid taps you're hearing is because I already know that I'm not going to be transforming in the Y or Z direction, so I just hit enter, enter, because it's already set for 1 from the first one I did. This is a good way to taper manually. Now there is a transform for tapering, and I will teach you that as well. But for our level and what we're doing right now in class, this is a good way to go about solving this problem. Now I'd like to move this row of points straight back to create more of a flare. Oh, but I don't want to move these, so I'll deselect those. To blunt the end of that spoon a little bit. And I like that. That's fine. Now if I had a nice image of a spoon here, I could be more particular about the shape of the bowl. There are some areas that I'm not crazy about. I'll try and sweeten it a little bit. Select U, non-uniform scale. And since it's going in the same direction as we have been scaling, it's pretty straightforward. Modify that as well. Non-uniform scale. Remember, you get a lot of artifacts visually until you actually start doing your 2 points of reference. Alright. I'm going to call that pretty good. Now if I wanted to create less of the belly right here, I could select those 3 rows of points. And I could actually non-uniform scale them. And I could just pick a point in the next row. It doesn't matter which point, because I'm not going to scale this way. If I scale this direction, it'll be asymmetrical, because that reference point, origin point, is not in the center line. But since I'm going to not scale that direction, hit 1, enter. I'm going to scale this direction. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle or not, because I'm not doing anything across here. I'm doing it this way. I could scale all of those points up a little bit. Z I'm going to keep at 1. And that changes the shape a little more. I want to bend the spoon handle up in a typical fashion. So I'm going to come to the heel area, select all of the points down beyond. I want to rotate this up, and I can't see what I'm doing or access that rotating wheel unless I'm from this view and have currently active the right C-plane. That gives me my grid behind there so I can see it. And rotate. I'll pick any point in this series. Doesn't matter, because Rhino, this is a 2D rotate. It's going to project that information to the C-plane anyway. Rotate it up to where I like it. If I would like a bit more of a bump up, I can actually just hit Move Enter, M Enter, and I can actually move the whole handle up a little bit. And then I could rotate it a little more. And then I'm going to deselect this row of points. And from the next row of points, I'm going to bend the spoon back the other direction. A little bit more. And a little bit more still. And a little bit more still. There. I do want to bend it up a bit, so I'm going to grab that first set of points that I had before at the heel of the bowl, and I will rotate the whole thing up a little bit. Or actually, what might work better is to actually move it straight up, holding down the ortho key a little. Yeah, that's more of what I was looking for. There. Turn off my control points. EMAP to get a good sense of what I've modeled. And that's it. My next tutorial, if I get a chance, I will go over again how to cut out the bowl, which would be a separate surface. But for now, for the basic form of a spoon, that's the entire spoon modeled from an ellipsoid solid. Thanks for watching.